offline and work with you guys. So I'm just recording this meeting. All right, let's get started. So as you all know, this is about getting to the why behind the voice. And my name is Adi Budhavarapu, and I lead a company called FocalCXM. We are very passionate about delivering remarkable experiences to customers and empowering them and enabling them to deliver great experiences. And I'm also very privileged and very humble to have Bill Inmon along with me here, who is we are doing this session together. As most of you are aware, he's called the father of the data warehouse. He doesn't need an introduction, and we are very blessed to have him on the session today. So the intent is really to talk through where the industry is and the challenges that folks typically face within the enterprise, and then talk about the solution that we collectively came up with. And Bill will be talking about the magic sauce behind the why behind the customer, and hopefully you'll learn something from this. So,
hello, Adi. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you again, and appreciate your time. So in general, right, from a market research perspective, the overall process is about defining a problem, developing a plan. All this happens within the enterprise. But the fundamental challenges happen within collecting the information, analyzing it, because as most of you know, there are multiple challenges here. And voice of the customer is really a technique within market research, and to help product managers, to help marketing teams, sales teams, enterprises, to really understand the customers very, very well, right? And today's discussion hopefully will shed some light with Bill's help on collecting the information and analysis of it. And how do we make it effective so that brands can actually have insights on delivering really great experiences. So one of the challenges from a survey and voice of the customer perspective, right? Typically what we're seeing is there are very, very low response rates. The folks do not like the traditional surveys anymore. So how do we really get them excited? But on the other hand, the expectations are really on the rise. So every customer is talking about a brand everywhere on social channels, or internally, call centers. There's so much of data that's coming into enterprises, and their expectations are really on the rise. But then gathering insights about them is a challenge. So there's so much of data, so much of information, yet so little insight. So the intent is, how do we help address these problems? Because if brands do not take care of this problem, ultimately this is what will happen, as we are seeing at a number of places across various industries, right? Being close to the customer, understanding their issues is a major, major issue, and brands need to be on top of that. So how do we go about it, right? So we have, FocalCXM has a product called StoryPulse, and again, we feel very lucky to be working with Bill's team, which is Forrester Technology, to really deliver a comprehensive voice of the customer. And on the StoryPulse front, primarily this is more of the information capture kind of a thing, because in a lot of industries, offline is still a big deal. Right, in pharmaceutical industries, in med device and life sciences and utilities, offline still plays a very, very critical role. And we should be in a position to capture where the customer is and not where Wi-Fi is, right? So StoryPulse from the ground up has been designed to really help brands capture feedback, either online mode using the web and offline as well. And there are so many elements to this, like live poll, for example, in medical education events or in a classroom setting. How do you capture feedback? Because feedback can take various forms, manifest in various ways, but brands should be ready to listen in every format, in every form possible. So StoryPulse at a high level is this kiosk mode. It provides various things, real time as well. For example, when a customer walks into a restaurant, it is extremely important and has a bad experience. It's very important that the brand or the restaurant owner is able to understand the pain points right then and there and challenge and address them when the customer is in the store. Because the moment the customer leaves the store, if the customer had a positive experience, that is pretty awesome, right? He will go out and Google it, which is great. But then just imagine if there's a negative experience, the voice goes out and the customer, the restaurant might be losing business. So empowering brands to actually capture real-time feedback at the time of the incident or when a negative experience happens. So there are so many things, integration with Salesforce, making it very brand specific and consent forms, because again, the feedback can come in various forms. So today we are not getting into the details of that. That is not the intent of this particular session. We might do more in the future, but the intent is on the right side. So we are capturing information, capturing feedback wherever the customers are, and then once we capture it, we are able to push it into enterprise CRM platforms, enterprise like Salesforce or Oracle CRM on demand, Sales Cloud, whatever the backend customer information system is. So we are able to push the information into that. But also, in addition to that, we are able to capture the information, especially when it comes to open-ended questions, when it comes to social text, when it comes to call center notes. How do we really make sense out of this valuable information that we are capturing from various sources? That's where Forrester comes in, and after a few minutes, I will let Bill and Mon talk through, and he'll explain with a clear example. Right. So with that, given that it is a Friday afternoon, I don't want to show too many slides, but I would like to get quickly into demo to give you guys an overview of how this solution looks like. So give me 1 minute while I bring up. So the first step is really the StoryPulse admin UI, right? This is where administrators, like marketing managers, brand managers, set up their assessments. And in a way, it's very different from the typical B2C kind of surveys, because this is more designed for brands to capture one-on-one information. One-to-one marketing is definitely possible with the current technology. So the administrators can define assessments here, which are really surveys, and then specify which reps in the field, if it's a sales scenario, which reps in the field can actually have access to what assessments, depending upon their roles, depending upon their positions within the company. Similarly, by understanding the customer segment, we can actually target the assessments to specific customer segments, right? For example, in the life sciences industry, one assessment for one particular customer may not be applicable for another customer. So this particular platform is extremely flexible to help you define those. So this is an existing assessment. You can define the themes. You can define various aspects. Who is it visible to? You can bring in data from Salesforce. You can bring in data from Contact. I'll show you after in a few seconds. But making that one-to-one marketing really possible is the intent of this. So, you can assign roles, specialty. Like I said, it's more meant for a B2B kind of a scenario. And then finally, once we have defined this and published this, I can open up, like let's say I'm just opening up this URL right here. So here I can bring up the, once the assessment is published, it's available to the folks in the field, anybody in a B2C scenario. I'll also show you how it works on an iPad setting. So let's say that, all right, this is a simple example, but how is the quality? I'm answering a bunch of questions, and from a Likert scale, and then finally I can say, all right, I'm a customer who visited the Focal and Pizza, and then this is great, but it felt insecure, right? So whatever the text is, so this is the valuable information that is going back to the brands. But as of today, as most of you know, there is so much of content, there is so much of unstructured text that is coming in, but it is not properly being leveraged, right? I read somewhere that 80% of this text is of the data that is within an enterprise is unstructured, and we are taking decisions based on just the 20% of the stuff which is in a structured format, and which may not be the right thing for enterprises. So this is just one format, and then similarly, I'll show you another way by which you can actually capture feedback using this tool. So this is in an iPad setting. right? So in a lot of places, what happens is, give me 1 second. In a lot of places, what happens is there are situations where we may have to capture, like I said, really, the contacts, the customers, and you may want to capture, I'm just playing my iPad here, but you may want to capture your customer feedback at an individual contact level. This is not a B2C kind of a scenario, but more of a B2B scenario where I'm just selecting a particular customer who walks into my store and capturing the feedback. All right, and the same way, I can specify on a Likert scale if I would recommend, and then just submit it. This could have open-ended questions. This could have a mix of traditional surveys, checkboxes, and notes. But the important point is, how do we really analyze this? So once we captured the feedback using a tool such as StoryPulse, and then the next step would be for us to take the feedback and then push it into a platform, including the unstructured text and everything, into ForestRem. So this is like a batch process kind of a thing, so I'm not showing how exactly we do it in this call. But pretty much imagine a push of a button, we are able to take all this feedback that's being collected, not just this, even the social channels, when you can follow a specific hashtag and we can get that information, and then we send it to ForestRem, right? So that's where the journey begins from a ForestRem perspective. I will show you the end-to-end flow. So this is where we are pushing it into the ForestRem, and once the ForestRem receives that information, Bill will be talking more about the magic sauce that he has within the technology. But imagine you're able to get all this unstructured text and yet convert it into a beautiful relational format where you're able to take decisions, right? So here is Salesforce. A lot of marketeers, as most of us know, within the CRM world, Salesforce is a big deal. So I can show it within the Salesforce thing, or if I want to play more with it, I can go directly into my Tableau environment. So here is essentially a simple UI where actually I'm consuming the output from ForestRem into a Postgres database that is sitting on Heroku. So all the data, the results from ForestRem got pushed into a warehouse within Postgres on the Heroku cloud, which is Salesforce's cloud. And from there, we are able to build out these beautiful reports that give brands tremendous insights on positive. Of course, it's all great, but let's say if I want to focus on some negative sentiment, what's happening with this particular sentiment, and where are the areas which I need to focus on. For example, as you can see here, on the negative sense, you're able to see that something is not right with the pool, something is not right with the road. So I can actually, I don't have an example here, but I can actually drill down into this road and figure out what are all the negative connotations associated with it. That's the beauty of the platform, and I will let Bill talk more about it. But once you get this output in a beautiful format in Tableau, and then you can export it using any pattern that, let's say, the CRM, such as Oracle Sales Cloud, or be it Salesforce, whatever the CRM system is, we can always integrate with that particular platform so that the brand managers, product managers can actually rely on the insights provided by the output from ForestRem and take the decisions which can really change the business. Right? As of today, this is not possible to the extent that we are talking about. Right? So this is an overall flow of how the administrator can define an assessment, end users will consume the assessment, and then we push all the information into ForestRem technology. ForestRem technology can pick it up from there and provide us these beautiful insights, which can be extremely powerful. Okay. So hope you got an overview of how this thing works. With that, I will give it away to Bill. Bill will walk you through a simple example of how powerful this concept of textual ETL is and what can be done with it.
Thank you, Adi. I appreciate it. Before we begin, I want to say that today's example is going to be done for a restaurant. That's because we have a very convenient demonstration made for it. But I'd like to point out that listening to your customer is something that is appropriate for every business, not just restaurants, but hotels, manufacturing, insurance, you name it. every organization needs to listen to their customer. However, in terms of the presentation I'm going to be doing for you today, I'm going to be doing it in the format of a restaurant. So can we have the next slide, please? Okay, when do we start to talk about a restaurant? It's typical to think in terms of certain parameters that make sense for the restaurant. And typically, those parameters include the information about the product, information about the service at the restaurant, the ambience of the restaurant, and the price of the restaurant. Now, there are other things that are important to restaurants, but in terms of general high-level importance, these are probably the most important things. So when we start to look at text, we focus in on these things. Next slide, please. The kinds of things that you find in a restaurant, typically when you read people's feedback for a restaurant, you read everything, but typically you read complaints. Every now and then you read compliments, and then you read suggestions. So when you take a look at the feedback that people are giving through text, this is what you expect to find. Next slide. And just as an example of what you might find in a restaurant, as I was going through my files the other day, I happened to kind of randomly run across this particular piece of feedback. Caesar salad, Parmesan chicken breast. I've ordered a Caesar salad with the Parmesan chicken breast twice now. Both times the restaurant neglected to include the chicken in my to-go order. Also, today I was given dressing that had separated. I called and was told that that's just how it was going to be. I love your restaurant, but I was very disappointed. Not a good experience at all. So this is what we mean by feedback to the restaurant. This is a customer talking about his or her own personal experience. And you'll note that it's in the form of text. Once it's in the form of text, the customer can say anything. They can say good things. They can say bad things. They can make suggestions. There's nothing that limits what the customer can say when it's in the form of text. Now, what we need to do is to be able to take this text and turn this text into a form of data that can be analyzed. And typically, that means taking this text and turning the text into a simple database, usually a relational database, but some form of database, because when we take a look at our analytical software, such as Tableau or Click or Excel or some type of software we have out there, our software expects, if it's going to analyze the data, to have the data be in the form of a database. So what we're going to do then is take text such as what you see right here, take that text and turn it into a standard database format. Next slide. I'd like to point out that some people have tried to do this manually, and certainly you can get someone to read these comments, but the problem is that typically you get so many comments that people can't do anything with it. We talked to a manager that said, I have 45,000 of these comments a month, and I tried reading them, but as I was reading them, when I finished, I could only remember 3 or 4 of the comments. So trying to process these comments manually, just from the standpoint of the volume of data, is something that's not very effective. So what we need to do is to enlist the computer to be able to handle the volume of data that we run across. Next slide. And so this is where I want to introduce you to technology you may or may not have ever heard of, something called Textual Etl. what Textual Etl does is its technology that reads textual data. Textual data can come from practically anywhere. It can come from call centers. It can come off the internet. It can come from customer feedback. It can come from email. It can come from practically anywhere. And we can read that text, pass it into Textual Etl. We make use of things called taxonomies. We take the taxonomies, use them in processing Textual Etl, and then produce for you a standard database. The database can be in any standard format. It can be an Oracle database, a SQL Server database, a Teradata database, a DB2 database, or whatever technology you want. Doesn't matter. We produce the database for you. And once it's in the form of a database, then you can take things like Tableau or Click or Excel or some of the other technologies and create an analysis. So what I'm going to show you is a brief explanation of how you go from textual data to the insights that occur in something like Tableau. Next slide, please. So one day we were working with a restaurant chain, and we took the data from the restaurant chain and organized the data into several categories. We took the comments and organized them into other ingredients: people, place, price, process, product, and promotion. And we did our analysis on it. Now, I don't have time today to go into with you the details of the analysis, but I want to show you some really obvious high-level things that came from looking at, in this particular case, about 40,000 comments that were gathered a month. And once we took those comments, we passed them through Textual Etl, put them into a database, and then made an analysis such as the one that you see here. Next slide. Next slide, please. And so there were a lot of interesting things that we found in the analysis. However, there were two things that stood out right off the bat. Number one, nobody said anything about price. Nobody complained about it. Nobody said anything about how good the price was. There was absolutely no feedback whatsoever on price. The same goes for promotion. Nobody said anything about promotions, either good or bad. Now, you can draw some interesting conclusions from this. One conclusion you can draw from this is that the people at the restaurant chain weren't charging enough, because if they were charging maybe a nickel or a dime per item on the menu, people weren't caring about that. Price was not an issue. So the first conclusion that we draw by listening to the voice of the customer was that the restaurant was not charging enough. They were leaving money on the table. And any businessman can tell you you don't want to leave money on the table. The second conclusion you can draw from this is one on promotion. Nobody had anything good or bad to say about promotions. Now, what does this tell you from a standpoint of listening to your customer? What this tells you is that the promotions that they were doing were totally ineffective. And by the way, this particular restaurant chain was doing promotions, but whatever promotion they were doing, people weren't paying any attention to it. Now, the whole purpose of a promotion is to get people to pay attention to it. So whatever they were doing, whatever money they were paying, whatever they thought they were doing in terms of marketing for promotion was totally ineffective. And so these two messages, the restaurant isn't charging enough and that the promotions they're doing are totally ineffective, these are really important messages for management to know. And how did we know these messages? We knew these messages by listening to the voice of the customer. And where did we get the voice of the customer from? We got it from text. The customer told us so. So this is what we mean by the importance of listening to the voice of your customer. There are really important messages out there if you will just listen to them. Next slide. So it turns out that in this study, there's actually a lot of other really important information. Although those two pieces of information, not charging enough and doing ineffective promotions, that in itself is really important information. But there's actually a lot of other really important information that came from listening to the voice of your customer. Next slide. Let's take a look at what people were talking about. When we take a look at the comments that people were making, what we found was that they were talking about different items on the menu, among other things. And they were talking about mac and cheese and penne rosa and Japanese pan noodles and steak stroganoff and things like that. And so that in itself, what is on people's mind is something that is really important. Knowing when our customers come into our place of business, what is it that they're interested in, that in itself, if we don't know anything else, is important information. However, given that we have the database in the that we've created from the text, we can start to do drill down. Let's take and drill down on what people are saying. Let's look at pad thai. Next slide. When we take a look at pad thai and we drill down, now how can we drill down? We can drill down because we have the data in the form of a database. That's why we can drill down. So we go from all of the subjects that people are talking about to a specific subject. In this case, we've chosen the subject pad thai because it looked to be interesting. So what can we say? What are people saying about pad thai? Well, we see that 48% of the people were dissatisfied. There were some people were satisfied, some people were neutral, but gosh, 48%. That means that some customers ordered pad thai and weren't happy with it. Now, if our story ended here, again, that would be an important thing to know, that people were not happy with pad thai. However, we can go, because we have the data in the form of a database, we can go to the next step and ask why. Why are people dissatisfied with pad thai when they go into the restaurant? Next slide. And what we find is when we go look at the negative, or we can look at this from the positive feedback of what people said that they liked, but we can look at it from a standpoint of negative feedback. And what we find is that the main reason why people didn't like pad thai was because of the small serving sizes. It wasn't because it was too hot. It wasn't because it was didn't have enough cheese. It wasn't because of anything. The main reason when people were dissatisfied was because of the portion sizes. So now management's got another important message. The important message that they have by listening to the voice of the customer is that when you are serving your customers food, increase your portion size. It's not going to cost you a lot of money to do that, but it's going to increase customer satisfaction. So being able to know the sentiment of the person and then being able to know why the sentiment has occurred is what we can learn by listening to the voice of the customer. Next slide. And here we see that the ability to drill down into our different comments and look at the specifics and not just why they're unhappy, but also why they're happy. What is it that pleases the customer? That this kind of information in terms of making your business grow and making your business be strong is exactly what you need. Next slide. Now, there's a lot of other things you can do with the data as well. Once you're able to take the voice of the customer, put it into the form of a database, and then analyze it, the world opens up to you as to what you can do. And so here we have an interesting analysis. We've taken our stores and lined them up. And we say, okay, for people that are receiving negative criticism, unsatisfied, dissatisfied criticism in their customer feedback, which are the most offensive stores? And it turns out that store 221 has received the most negative feedback, and then store 326, and then store 510. So being able to rank your stores in terms of customer happiness and satisfaction is another important thing that you can do when you're able to listen to the voice of your customer. However, looking at the stores from a standpoint of total satisfaction this way can be very misleading. Next slide. The reason why it can be misleading is, suppose that store number 221 is in downtown Manhattan and gets 10,000 customers a day. And suppose that store 615 is in Gallup, New Mexico, and gets 500 customers a day. To look at the raw information of who's getting the most complaints can be very misleading. Just because they service so many more customers, the store in downtown Manhattan, you would expect to have a lot more customer dissatisfaction. So when you factor in store size by bringing in classical structured information and comparing it with your textual information, you can get real insights as to which of the stores are managed the best. And I hope you can see from these simple examples that I've shown in front of you that there's really valuable information out there when it comes to looking at the voice of the customer. The voice of your customer can tell you really, really important, valuable things, but people, for the most part, don't know that they can listen to the voice of the customer. Next slide. So this then is what we mean by being able to go from textual information, pass it through Textual Etl. Adi was talking about taking the textual portion of feedback and processing it. This is what happens, and we turn that into insights. Now we can focus on product, store, service, pricing, and other important pieces of information. Next slide. Now, I would like to make a one-time offer to the people that are on the call. We know that listening to the voice of your customer is something that you probably haven't done, and it's something that's somewhat of an experiment for you. We know that. And so what we would like to make an offer to you is we will be happy for your organization to go out to the Internet, find 500 comments about your company on the Internet, capture them, process them, and give you the database for analysis. And furthermore, we're going to operate on a first-come, first-served basis, and we will do this for free for a limited time. So just so that you can see that indeed you can start to listen to the voice of your customer, we want you to, the way you understand that you can really do it is to see your data coming in that's relevant to your business, And we'll be happy to go out to the internet, collect a few sample queries, comments from the internet, and process them for you. That way you can see for yourself that it is absolutely possible and very important, very fruitful to listen to the voice of your customer. So that's what I wanted to tell you today about being able to, and again, we've talked in terms of a restaurant, but I hope you can see that listening to your voice to your customer is absolutely important, well beyond restaurants. Not that I have anything against restaurants, but that's just what our example was in today. So with that, I want to turn you back to Adi and our partner, FocalCXM.
Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you. That's very helpful. So yeah, like Bill said, we can help you. We can help you with identifying the feedback, identifying the voice of the customer for you in general from the unstructured text, and we can build out your reports to you as well. Work with you individually to understand your needs. In addition to that, if you also want to implement a feedback system in case for your specific industry, for your specific company, if offline is a big deal for you, or if you want to try out real-time feedback or anything from the StoryPulse perspective, we will be sharing a white paper with all the feature sets, and very happy to work with you to make your voice of the customer program successful. With that, if you have any questions that we can answer, we can happy to help. We can probably take a bunch of them because we have some time. You can just enter them in the chat window, and we should be able to see that. Okay, I see one question coming in. How does the integration work between StoryPulse and ForestRim? So primarily, as of now, the integration is like we generate a manual file, a flat file that gets fed into the ForestRim technology, and that is how the output gets generated. The output can be pushed into any database. Really, multiple databases are supported. We can share some collateral with you guys. So that's how the integration works. Success stories. Yeah, we do have a bunch of success stories on the integration and on each of the individual pieces as well. For example, for StoryPulse, we have extensive usage in the life sciences industry where one of our marquee customers leverages it across about 20 countries where they go, sales reps go and capture feedback from doctors. And the same thing for ForestRim as well. There are a number of success stories. I think there are many case studies posted on the website. So Bill or I can share with you guys to see how customers leverage our products. Okay. Anything else? Okay, looks like that's about it. Thank you all for your time. Once again, we truly appreciate it. And we will get back to you with a white paper that we recently wrote and some collateral related to the product lines as well to see how we can work together.
Thank you,
everyone. Thank you all. Bye-bye.